Well, we're going to talk a little bit about Northeastern Pennsylvania pride. Alex Wilkes is on the phone with us right now. She has been named one of the 30, under 30, up-and-coming best conservative minds in the nation. She is a woman who was the first woman named to be the chair of the College Republican National Committee, and she is a Wilkes-Barre native. How are you, Alex?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for the very kind introduction.
Yeah. Now, your marriage name is Wilkes, and you're from Wilkes-Barre. How'd you manage that?
And believe it or not, my father-in-law's name is Barry.
Man, oh man. Well, you fit right in. So, I wanted to talk to you because you can kind of give us the millennial point of view of this whole Kavanaugh thing. What are your basic thoughts on what's going on?
Well, what I really see here is an erosion not only of basic journalistic standards, but of due process protections here in our country that I find to be alarming. And speaking as a young person, where we first saw this happening, and a lot of people didn't take notice of it or remember it, was on college campuses during the Obama administration when they sought to restructure Title IX to adjudicate sexual assault complaints on campus as opposed to through the legal system. So there was a concern over how sexual assault claims were being handled on campus, and the Obama administration said, well, because it's too difficult to speak to law enforcement about this, we're going to have panels of professors and counselors and students adjudicate these disputes instead. And instead of rapists going to jail, we're just going to move them out of the dorm, maybe give them a slap on the wrist, some community service. So you could see how we were already in a pretty precarious place starting under the Obama administration. And these courts were specifically set up with a lower evidence threshold standard, but also one where students or the accused were not presumed innocent until proven guilty. And so now we fast forward to the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation. Here we have an incredibly qualified jurist, someone who is deserving to be on the Supreme Court. And we have accusations that have come out. I think Republicans have been right to try to accommodate people who wish to testify and who wish to, speak about their experiences in this. I think what Brett Kavanaugh said yesterday during his interview is that he wants a fair process. But there's been this rush on the left to basically crucify him without any kind of corroborating evidence or, back up to the claims that are being made out there. So I really do find this troubling.
There's a report today that the protests are just out of control, that there's one group that's going to project onto the front of the Supreme Court building, Kavanaugh is a sexual predator. I mean, that's exactly what you're saying. That's convicting before even hearing the case here. I mean, the protests are Ted Cruz and his wife chased out of a restaurant. I mean, the protests are out of control, aren't they?
Completely. And, they were out of control even before these accusations were made. This has really just been a professional hit job from the beginning. It feels like a century ago, but if you remember, it was a Monday night. The president was going to announce Judge Kavanaugh as his pick to the Supreme Court in this very stately ceremony at the White House. And we had protesters, including 2020 hopefuls like Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, parked out in front of the Supreme Court. And the protesters had signs that had names written in of possible people who it could be. And in some cases, they were holding up the wrong signs. They sent out the wrong press releases because they were from the very beginning going to oppose this nomination with everything that they had. That's what Chuck Schumer said, the leader of the Senate Democrats. He said, we are going to put it all on the line to oppose this nomination. And he was not kidding. So, whether you look at the hundreds of arrests that were made throughout the confirmation hearings, you could barely turn on the hearings for more than 5 minutes before you heard someone yelling in the chamber and disrupting the process. So these are already out of control. But now I think, especially after these allegations, they've really increased in terms of their vitriol. And people in the Democratic Party like Maxine Waters, who encourage people to threaten and intimidate, members of the Trump administration at gas stations, at restaurants, wherever they were, they're only adding fuel to the fire and creating, I think, a very dangerous situation.
Now, being a conservative mind on a college campus, being the college Republican National Committee chairwoman, was that tough? I mean, being a conservative on a...
It definitely was. There was a constant institutional bias against conservatives on campus. We really saw that professors and the administration would go to great lengths to try to stifle the debate. I think now, though, the 2016 election sort of upended a lot of what was going on college campuses in terms of the suppression of free speech. Now the professors have gotten worse in this era, but I do think that the advent of social media has really played a huge role in giving conservatives a voice, because no longer are you the only kid in the classroom who holds a belief, who gets shamed for that belief, who gets their grade lowered for that belief. You now have the ability to project out your opinions and those of your professors to millions of people worldwide, and that really is empowering from the standpoint of course correcting, some of these more outrageous incidents. I mean, look, on a college campus, you're going to get all kinds of different viewpoints, and some of my very favorite professors were the most liberal professors you could find. I think where we worry, though, about is not professors who are liberal and have a viewpoint and are open about that viewpoint with students and ask them for challenging opinions. We worry about the professors that try to stifle other opinions in the classroom. So I think that, social media has made it a little bit easier for conservatives in this new time.
Yeah, I want to know your opinion of what you think is actually going to happen on Thursday. There are suggestions now that there is the possibility that Christine Ford will not testify because of the objection to the sexual prosecutor that's going to question. You got the second woman coming forward. What do you hear? What's the buzz? What do you think's actually going to happen?
If I knew, I'd be the richest person in Washington. But, I think that it's really up in the air. And I think that this really speaks to how reckless Senator Dianne Feinstein was in holding back this information for months and not letting her colleagues know about it, because the proper place to have put this information was in the hands of Senate investigators when they were reviewing this nomination from the beginning. That was the appropriate time for this information to come out so that investigators could go through and evaluate these claims and make provisions for witness testimony where other senators could have used private or public moments to question Judge Kavanaugh on these claims. Instead, what the Democrats did is they waited until the most politically opportune moment to drop these claims, and now the rest of the country is being held hostage, by, I think, this recklessness on their behalf. So, I can't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow, and that, the people who are to blame for that are the Senate Democrats, because they were the ones that injected uncertainty and sort of a reckless disregard for fact-finding from the very beginning of this.
Last question. From your point of view, what do you think the role of the millennials will be in the midterms?
Well, recent polls have come out and shown that millennial participation or enthusiasm, I should say, for participating in the midterms is low. That's roughly what we see every midterm election, that the millennials are more fired up in presidential years, less so in midterm elections. But look, as I've been saying for years now, the party must and should do better with younger people. The fact that they're not coming out in the midterm elections and potentially that could help some Republicans in some places shouldn't be a comforting thought to Republicans out there and conservatives. The real the real impulse should be, how do we excite these younger people about conservative principles? How do we animate them to support us in coming elections because, the millennials aren't going anywhere. They're going to grow up, but, this is a generation that's growing up with a different set of values. And so it's important to make them understand that conservative principles are timeless and they work for them in their everyday lives, whether or not they know it.
Well, now, Alex, you can download radio.com. You can listen to WYLK anywhere you are so you can get all the hometown news from Wilkes-Barre.
Just hearing the commercials alone made me so homesick.
Thanks for talking to us. Have a good afternoon.
Anytime.
All right.